in Lake Eden, Vermont, near where I grew up in Cabot and Richford, Vermont, with my oldest daughter, Kirsten. And we thought you'd tell you a little bit about my autobiography, Loves in My Life, Spirituality, Science, and Family.
So Dad, this is quite a book about your whole life, your biography from birth until, and all your life.
I'm 89 now. So
He's
I'm
89, from birth until 89.
89, I'm 89.
So give us a little intro. How does your life begin?
Well, I was born in Boston, but my parents, my father was a Methodist minister here in Vermont, and I remember living in Cabot, Vermont, from 1936 to 1940, and raising pigs with my Methodist minister dad during those hard times. But I didn't particularly know about. I always had enough to eat, and but I suddenly discovered my love of science, and then I discovered, unfortunately, that my Richford, Vermont High School didn't have the advanced math course for me to attend MIT. That was a requirement. You had to have some advanced math courses, and my parents couldn't afford to send me into a private school. So getting through MIT with a master's and a bachelor's was a challenge.
You had a lot of experiences there, didn't you?
Well, yeah, since then, that's right. Since then I was a branch chief at the Air Force Research Laboratory, and my research group there was involved with the development of the Surface Acoustic Wave filters, little tiny components that are now inside cell phones. They're small enough filters to work inside cell phones. We wouldn't have cell phones without these tiny little components.
That's a wonderful achievement.
And I have several patents, and and then I should probably tell you about a little bit my family life. The first girl I proposed to when I was a junior at MIT, I'd taken her to the MIT junior prom and several other dances, and when I finally proposed to her, she said, "Oh, marrying you would ruin my social life. But fortunately, your mother accepted." Kirsten's mother accepted.
She said the opposite. She said, "I'd go anywhere with you."
She said, "I would go anywhere in the world with you." So
right. Quite a different answer.
Quite a different answer, and guess what? We were married in the MIT chapel. My father married in the MIT chapel. And Kirsten is the oldest of my 5 daughters, and you can learn more in my book, but the biggest tragedy of our family life was that she died when Kirsten was in her 20s, but her 3 youngest sisters, what are their names, Kirsten?
Tina, Emily, Lilo, and Sophia.
Your youngest cities. And you and Tina were in your 20s and sort of grown
Yes.
up, but it was a great challenge for me to...
Emily, Lilo, and Sophia.
Yeah, my youngest daughters, 16, 14, and 12, were teenagers, and I never was a girl. That was a big challenge bringing them up. So you can learn how I managed to do that. They're doing well, wouldn't you say, Kirsten? We're proud of them.
Oh, absolutely. They're wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And
all my sisters.
Your sisters. Mm-hmm. So have a look at my book, and you'll learn more. So thanks for listening.
So, Dad, I wanted to ask you too. I thought your life has been very fascinating throughout your life, but I also thought it was very interesting to for you to tell people what about happened. You took an early retirement, and how I felt you had a very unusual path that was very inspiring for the second half of your life. And can you want to talk a little about that?
Yes. Well, when I first went to MIT, having grown up in a minister's home, I had an existential shock. I discovered there were people there for whom religion just didn't matter, and that was really a shock. And so and I love science, and I always wanted to relate the two. And so when I retired, I was able to get the Templeton Foundation to give me a grant to develop a course relating religion and science. I called it Religion and Science, Cosmos to Consciousness, and I taught it at UMass Lowell in the philosophy department. And this inspired my book, Beauty in Science and Spirit, in which I and I basically find beauty in both. I love religious music, art, liturgy, worship, community, and I love scientific, the comprehensiveness of scientific theories, and particularly their ability to predict new phenomena. So I like rational structure, and that was part of my book. I described that. I quote Whitehead, who said, "The purpose of the universe is the production of beauty," and hopefully in these beautiful surroundings of New York. That's why we love nature. Come to nature. We love Lake Eden and being close to nature in rural Vermont.
Exactly. And also, would you like to say a little bit more about? When I was little, I remember I used to go to these wonderful. My father was very, very skilled at giving talks. You know, and when he's a physicist, he'd give these incredible talks. You know, with a slideshow and presentations. And I was very impressed how when he retired, he just continued that, but he would always make new talks about what
various aspects of science and religion.
Science, religion, and also you did global warming, right? You've done the environment.
Right.
You've done,
yes.
You know, how to, you know, social aspects. Henry David Thoreau, like he's just very expansive in his, and he still to this day gives talks everywhere.
That's
he
true.
He goes to conferences and is always learning. He's always
we're both members of the Thoreau Society.
Thoreau Society, exactly.
Which meets in Concord, Mass.
Would you like to talk about your latest presentation you gave at the Baldwin?
My latest presentation at my retirement home, which is called the Baldwin in London, New Hampshire. I talk about. I saw the movie. Maybe a lot of people saw the movie Oppenheimer. It describes the development of the atomic bomb, and it reminded me of my first experience of learning about the atomic bomb. It was a hot summer afternoon of August 6, 1945, and I stepped into my aunt's home and in Boston. She was in Boston, and heard on the radio that a single bomb had destroyed the Japanese city of Hiroshima, and I couldn't believe it, because I knew I had a cousin in Vermont that was dropping lots of bombs over Germany to win the war, and so I just wanted to know. I always wanted to know how things worked, and so that's one of the main reasons I majored in physics at MIT, was just to learn how a nuclear bomb should have so much more energy and power than the chemical exposures that power most of our bombs.
Yes, and I always was. So that really spurred you on to learn how things work.
I always want to know how things work.
I remember you always talked about the atom when we were little. How does the atom work? You taught us the neutron and the proton.
And the nucleus and the electrons,
exactly.
Right? Held together by electrical forces.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes.
But those electrical forces are much weaker than the forces that hold the protons and neutrons together in the nucleus. Like the nuclear forces are like almost 1 billion times stronger than the electromagnetic forces that hold atoms together. So when you break up the nucleus, you get about 1 million times more energy.
Right.
That was what took me a while to learn.
Another talk I love that you do, Dad, is when you talk about the origin of the universe.
Oh yes, the origin.
There's lots of talks about how did the universe originate and how did it evolve.
How did it evolve? That's right.
Beautiful talks on that with slides and.
Yes, that's right. Right.
And also
all emerged from a very hot cosmic explosion.
Right. Another nuclear explosion.
Another nuclear explosion. That's right.
Yeah.
The nuclear explosion, and as the explosion expanded, it cooled, and then the protons and the electrons condensed out and formed atoms.
Yes.
Yes. And so that's how we got our first atoms.
Right. Right.
And we actually know how hot it is because some of the protons fuse to form helium, which is how our sun gets its energy, and so we know that it was hot as the sun in the early Big Bang. But as it expanded, it cooled, and then as it cooled, there were some inhomogeneities or clustering of the energy and the atoms, and they came together, and gravity pulled them together to form stars, planets, and galaxies in the early universe. And it's still expanding.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's still expanding. The universe is still expanding.
Absolutely.
Yes. As is our knowledge.
And I've always been so impressed with my dad that as long as he's as he's lived longer, he's expanded more. He's expanded socially, his mind, his giving. He gives to. He always wants to learn more. He wants to share it with others.
Yeah, that's true.
And he's 89, and he's not slowing down. He keeps going. Another thing I was so impressed with is that my father, after losing our beautiful mother, who we loved so much, and it was a huge loss. He was a widow for many years, and then he had a new love come into his life. He was able to, through Match.com, a beautiful woman also who was beloved by our family, and that was another expansion. So my dad has just continued expanding throughout his life, and I really admire that. And
well, thanks.
Always learning and giving to others.
Kirsten, also, that's the reason I moved from Bedford, Mass,
Right.
where you grew up and you still live.
Yes.
We lived there for 40 years, and so in my book I describe why it was that after living 40 years in Bedford, Massachusetts, I moved 50 miles north it was 40 miles north to Bedford, New Hampshire.
Right, that's unusual, right?
To marry Ginny,
I know.
your new mother,
Yes,
your second mother.
So there's another way my dad continues to expand I feel he's a person who really lives fully. And he makes the most of life in every moment. It's very, I admire that in you, Dad, and very inspiring. So, yes. So if you want to find out more,
just read my book.
Yes, he has all the wonderful stories. He has wonderful stories when he was a child, and through MIT, throughout all his life, through his children, through his work. There's his patents, right?
Yes, my patents. Yes.
Yeah, and how his work beyond in his retirement, which just kept flowering and blossoming and expanding, just like the expanding nuclear.
Just like the expanding nuclear, the expanding universe, which started as a nuclear explosion, including nuclear
and my father,
nuclear fusion.
His example of someone who continues to expand and live life fully, and he doesn't, he's young at heart, It's wonderful, very inspiring.
All right. Well, thank you.